Greetings, this is Griff Ruby with another Isaac Asimov short story. This is a very short, and it's simply called Dreamworld. There's not much to see in this original publication here. It does not get the cover. His name is not on the cover of the magazine. Even in the table of contents, it's just the last thing. Dreamworld by Isaac Asimov, page 127. Sure enough, there it is. No artwork, no blurb. It's all on one page. And that's all there is. So it's a very short. Probably the best description of that I could come up with before I give my own personal thoughts on this is given by Isaac Asimov. In the first place, that finally saw French gathered in a book, which was, of all things, Isaac Asimov's Opus 100. It's not in any of the other collections up to that point. You'd think it would be in Earth is Room Enough, or, well, it's too short of a story to be in Nine Tomorrows, but, it could have been in maybe Nightfall or something, but no, it's not in any of those collections. It only finally got collected into hardcover for book with Opus 100. And then even in Opus 100, it appears only in, a chapter that's called Short Stories. It's the last one. Again, there's Dreamworld from 1955. But there's a nice little blurb that he introduces here, where he talks about the story. He says, even in my fiction writing, I sometimes write a very short piece to fill a scrap of time. I have written an occasional vignette, 500 words long or less. Such tiny pieces consist entirely of endings, to be sure, building up to the final shock in the last line. I myself am a devotee of the pun as a final shock. Note that carefully. This penchant for punning and wordplay, which I have, induces considerable unpopularity for myself at social gatherings, you can well imagine. It was only 2 nights ago that I told some friends of mine, Mr. and Mrs. Member, that if they had a daughter, they ought to name her Rebecca. Naturally, they asked why, and I said that she would be known by the nickname Ree, and then they could be Remember. I was ostracized for the rest of the evening, justifiably so, as a groaner. Anyway, the first vignette I wrote depended for its effect on a perfectly deplorable pun in the last line, and one which makes its maximum impact on devotees of old-fashioned science fiction. I wrote it in such a way that the last line was by itself at the top of the final page of the manuscript, so that Anthony Boucher, who was then editor of Fantasy and Science Fiction, and who was an outstanding devotee of bad puns and campy science fiction, would not see it in advance and find its impact didn't. It worked perfectly. He turned to the last page, not seeing what I was getting at, and the pun hit him dead center. Here's the vignette in full, and it gives it right there. Now, when we talk about classic science fiction, we're talking about the kind of stuff you find, not the great stuff that he wrote, or the kind of thing you find from Harlan Ellison or Peter Heinlein or Arthur Clarke or Ray Bradbury, or Vogt, or all the Lester Del Rey, all the great names of science fiction, with whom Isaac Asimov, was definitely, one of the ranking members of that elite group. We're talking about the kind of lowbrow stuff where somebody finds themselves on a planet full of giant, grasshoppers or lizards, or, the kind of thing. I think it's like it's an Outer Limits episode, something like that. Oh, all of a sudden there's all these giant ants crawling around everywhere, and it's that kind of lowbrow science fiction that he's never really been involved in. But it's kind of like a sort of science fiction trope, mutations that create super anything, super people, super, well, anything else, grasshoppers, frogs, or weird alien beings from bacteria, whatever. Okay, so this one ends with a pun. I don't want to spoil the pun. It's actually one of his good ones. I might as well get to my personal comment right here. It ends with a pun, and I dare say it's a good pun. The scenario, let us briefly indicate. There's a boy named Edward Keller who's a science fiction devotee, and he's been so for 4 years. Now he's 13 years old, and he's had all these dreams. And he'd be told, face reality, Eddie. But and I dreamed Martians were chasing me. See, I had a special death ray, but the atomic power unit was pretty low, and all these kinds of yeah, that's kiddie science fiction. Okay. And then there's an interesting supposition he gets told, and I'm getting close to it here. Suppose you went in your dream and you couldn't wake up. And maybe it could be a nightmare. You're being chased by Martians, or dinosaurs or whatever, and you can't wake up and get out of the dream. And I will take it only that far. As I say, it's a real short story. It's not easy to find, unfortunately. I think it did actually get released 1/3 place, but I don't know. At any rate, it's got a good pun at the end of it all. And unfortunately, like I say, I think you'd have to get Opus 100. Or there's some other newer collection I think that he finally did stick it in. Anyway, as I say, it all just builds up to a pun. But as I say, probably one of his very best, which is, especially in comparison to that other Groner. No, remember, no, that's not worth remembering. But what's on here is really good fun. It will give you a belly laugh. That's all I have to say about that one. That's all there is.